live edition of Blacklisted Radio. It is good to be back here in the saddle. It's been a while. It's the 23rd day of September 2018. It's starting to get cool outside. It's pretty nice weather. It's been really wet here. Of course, all of our friends on the East Coast and the Outer Banks and in Carolina, they've been submerged with just epic amounts of rainfall. Lots of things that we've been reporting over the last few weeks at blacklistednews.com concerning some of the environmental issues that happen when you have being into nuclear power plants, not to mention all the raw sewage, the swine. Did you see all the pigs underwater? Careful eating pork over the next few months coming out of that region. A lot to look at, and of course, most importantly, the people the humans that are affected by this displaced areas. And of course, it's more and more man-made global warming to blame for these tragedies. Each and every time I hear this, it's unprecedented. It's never happened. More rainfall than ever measured. Well, that's the thing about extremes and about records. They're always broken at some point, and I don't know. I think a lot of people get off into the weeds, and quite literally use these kind of events tragically, like the poor returns on the investment that people have made into the Red Cross in these situations. Not that they don't do good work, but they can be pretty scummy. So there's just so many stories over the last 2 weeks that I have missed, but before we get to them, and there are plenty. This is Blacklisted Radio. I'm your host, Doug Owen, by the way, and you can join me online. BlacklistedRadio.com is where I will be in just a moment. Should just go there now. We have an interactive chat room there. We have lots of ways for you to be part of the show to help us propagate its audio format to all the places now that you can find it. iHeartRadio, Spotify, until the powers that be deem this show too dangerous, too hate-ridden, too taboo, too dangerous for the airwaves, or they just happen to notice us. So riding under the radar as usual. This show, I wouldn't say it's limited hangout, because that usually has a negative connotation to some kind of CIA operation. But we do have a very smart and somewhat curtailed amount of people that listen to the show, just because I don't do it every week like I should, just because I don't do the self-promotion. And what we end up doing is having kind of a bloodletting, a little stream of consciousness, looking at some of the stories and interacting with the chat room and having fun there. Doing so. You can also call the show 800-343-9443, toll-free number to join us. I wanted to comment so badly on the Joe Rogan podcast that featured Elon Musk. There was a lot of things to take away from this episode, especially when talking about the transhumanist agenda and how social media has become a way to create a hive mind of system where all of our thoughts, our dreams, our opinions, our emotional state, not to mention our emotions, our expressions that go into this hive mind. The output is what you see there at Twitter. And, over the last few weeks, with Trump coming forward and saying that he wants to sign an executive order to look into social media bias, some of the obvious social media biases that we see. We talked a lot about the selective enforcement of these rules and the new interpretation of what radicalism is, what terrorism is. And that's something, that I've been banging the drum on a lot, is the redefining of what free speech is and is not. Alex Jones isn't the first person that has found themselves being ostracized from the norm, being taken away from the outlets that have now become these huge mega conglomerates: Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Google, Microsoft. A few of the ways to reach 90 plus probably percent of the people on the internet. And so I saw a story about how this group, this right-wing watch, I think it was a George Soros funded group, but then again, I mean, he funds a lot of things. So, but one of these think tanks went out of their way to go after PayPal and lawyer up and go through their terms and services, and basically use this kind of catch-all that non-harassment, can't be mean, can't be hateful, and of course, what do you define as hate? That's very subjective, but they were able to pressure PayPal to shut Alex Jones off through their service. So the attacks continue, and of course, just to see how many people on the left and right that I think are probably pretty smart and free thinking individuals. Yeah, they get caught in one paradigm or the other. They get stuck somewhere in party politics, but just to see the amount of people that are happy about this is pretty shocking. But anyway, I kind of sidebarred off into that from Elon Musk being on Joe Rogan's podcast. Somehow I got there to let's go back, and the whole world was amazed and upset, and it rattled the stock of Tesla because it is a public traded company, and because he took a toke off of a blunt. And the first thing I thought was, this guy didn't inhale any of this. If he did, I mean, it was just such a tiny amount. I mean, I take more in with a cigar when I retrohale than he did. And so, I mean, he may have got the flavor in his mouth, but that was just about it. And oh my God, everybody was just freaking out. It was this big story. And, ooh, can you have the CEO doing this? And of course, on the heels of him tweeting that he was going to buy back stock, and now you get the Security Exchange Commission looking into these tweets. I mean, it's really interesting to see how social media and something like the Joe Rogan podcast can shake the markets, can rattle stocks. But I mean, there was many more of the profound discussions that were there. But of course, that was the big story. Listening to Elon Musk talking about AI and moving into a world where we have very little control, where most of our daily decisions are already predicted. And I don't know, a lot of people like that. I was watching some collegiate football over the weekend, and some of these 5G commercials from Verizon were, I swear, they look just like the old previews for Alex Jones's police state videos, where everything is being tracked and traced 24 hours a day. The cars, the biometric integration, all of the kiosks, these repeaters, these transponders on light poles, hooking up and following everybody, all for the ever elusive idea that we're going to have 100% safety and efficiency. Turning off the lights when there's nobody there, turning them back on, finding out where people are, and you just see this really dystopic future, the potential for that coming under the guise of this new rollout. And they're very proud, Verizon, talking about building this network. Now, there's a few towns, I think 2 in California, that are pushing back and do not want to be part of the 5G experiment. And we have seen lots of the reports. I don't know how many are valid, because I just don't have the medical credentials to say, okay, 5G is absolutely going to be used to control people through some kind of acoustic device. I mean, I've seen some pretty wild stuff about what people think 5G will do. Obviously, causes cancer. I mean, I could tell you right off the bat that transmitting radio frequencies through our bodies is, it has to have a profound effect. We are mechanical machines, and so measurable amounts of radiation that are constantly flowing through our bodies have some kind of effect. Now, how negative, how debilitating, you can just guess. I mean, I would imagine it has quite a bit of effect. And so at different frequencies, of course, they transmit through water. I think some of the lower frequencies scare me more than even some of these higher and faster frequencies that we're seeing that would go with the 5G network. But anyway, the telecom companies are never going to talk about the potential health risks. And quite frankly, it's always something that they'll look at in the rear view. They're not that worried about the health effects. And so there's many people that are crying out about these potentials. And really, there's just no known science because we don't have a long enough test period to really understand what it will do. Some of those people that are making what I would say are even somewhat hyperbolic statements are probably absolutely right in what the overall effects will be. We've already talked about a lot here, the smart meters, the smart everything. And it's a lot more than just, knowing how much electricity you use. It's giving very detailed and private information about your habits when you're home, when you're not home, when you use electricity. And so that can be very valuable if you're constantly looking for reducing costs, reducing your usage. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I do like the idea of not wasting energy, considering what we have to do here to create it in many cases. Another huge issue from the flooding is this old coal ash plant that has arsenic and other horrible contaminants from these coal mines reaching or being breached by fresh water. Always a big problem, when we look at what we do to create power. Now, I'm not some hippie. I understand what petroleum products do, and there's a lot of money in them. I think that when you have, the billions of people that we have on planet Earth, it's crazy that we have things like one-use plastic, bottles, things that I think will be absolutely banned and forbidden in the future, for better or worse. Probably worse, quite honestly. But yeah, I mean, I'm very, very conscious of the environment and our impact on it. I just don't think that some of the scams, some of the Agenda 21 pushes to, get people en masse in these, control grid smart cities. I mean, it was just such a scary commercial just watching it. I was like, oh my God. But people probably like it now. They're rolling it out. Anyway, some of the other interesting stories here. We got a few minutes before the break. Beyonce's ex-drummer requests restraining order claiming Beyonce practices extreme witchcraft. This is all you had to say. I mean, this is a great headline. Big league politics brings us a story. The former drummer of Beyonce's band, Kimberly Thompson, requested a restraining order against her former employer, claiming the singer practices, quote, extreme witchcraft. One of the Blast, I guess, is a news source, reported. The Blast obtained court documents where ex-drummer says, I worked for her as a drummer for the band for 7 years. Thompson claims Beyonce has started a campaign of harassment against her. They included extreme witchcraft, dark magic, magic spells of sexual molestation. She also claims Beyonce murdered her kitten. Thompson's request for a temporary restraining order was denied by a judge, with an upcoming hearing on the restraining order scheduled for October 11th. Along with Beyonce, Thompson has played drums in the Fred Armisen-led house band for the first season of The Late Night with Seth Meyers. So anyway, either this girl is completely off her rocker, or, as I think a lot of our listeners at least entertain the idea of, and that is that Beyonce, Jay-Z are part of the Illuminati, and they do practice black magic and go to seances and other really creepy, weird things that the ultra-rich elite in Hollywood do, and that is go to creepy parties. Creepy parties. And, do black magic. And I know it sounds silly to a lot of you, and I think that, looking into the Bohemian Grove and looking into a lot of these secret societies and some of these ancient forbidden knowledges that are that have always been sought out by the rich and powerful, the secrets, the esoteric secrets to the universe. And you find a lot of these people are into black magic. So I don't know if this just is a coincidence. This chick is off her rocker, but I tend to I don't ignore it, bring it to the show because I think it's interesting that this chick would say this out of nowhere. This former drummer who had a very, very good knowledge of Beyonce, being that she was so close to her for so long. Anyway, interesting things that are, I guess, really irking people, and that is Willie Nelson, excuse me, who is loved by and adorned by most in the counterculture. A lot of patriots and freedom-loving Americans, people like Alex Jones, I can't stop talking about him, I'm sorry, like Willie Nelson, have interviewed him, and he has talked about his questions on Building 7, on I think Larry King's TV show on CNN. So I mean, he's kind of anointed. People in Texas, I mean, obviously the symbolic aspect of him, his notoriety in the cannabis culture is, it's apparent. Well, anyway, he decided to take a gig where he's going to get some heat, or I don't know, maybe a lot of those people are going to like Willie Nelson a little bit less. He has become a Beto-phile. Talked about the people that are voting for Beto O'Rourke. Now, I did you watch any of the debate? I watched all of it, unfortunately, between him and Ted Cruz. And I'm not a big Ted Cruz fan. I do think that he's pretty smart, and he's a constitutionally sound conservative. I know his wife worked for Goldman Sachs, so don't get me wrong. I don't get excited about I don't get really excited about Ted Cruz. But Beto O'Rourke, I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt. My leftist sister and my mom wanted me to check out Beto O'Rourke, and it's exactly, his platform is exactly what I thought it would be, and that is bringing people together, holding hands, loving one another, and taking people's gun rights away. And that's going to be the solution moving forward. Pedophiles. We'll talk more about them and Willie Nelson. Much more coming your way right here on Blacklisted Radio. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. I don't know. Maybe people are confused about Willie Nelson. They thought that he was a die-hard Republican. They may not remember that he actually wrote a song about gay cowboys that was in the soundtrack for Brokeback Mountain. Here's one. Quote, "Cowboys are often, frequently, secretly fond of each other." That's one of his songs. Of course, he's become a hero in the pro-legalization movement. And, he sits on the board of animal welfare organizations, doesn't seem to be a Republican. Not that, it's a big deal to me. I've always separated artists from who they may be. Like, I don't like Beyonce, but it's not necessarily because she's possibly a devil worshiper. She practices black magic and uses that on people like her former drummer. That's not why. I'm just not a big fan of the sound. I'm just, I'm not a big fan of the songs. Now, that doesn't mean she's not super talented, and I don't want to get into a Beyonce argument because people will start texting because that is a topic that is text worthy. But anyway, Willie Nelson's been taking a lot of heat for going to this pro rally for Beto O'Rourke. And, I have to be honest. I mean, when it comes to, what I want a senator for Texas to do, I haven't been real thrilled with Ted Cruz. I don't know how much worse somebody that was to the left, how much worse that would be. The Senate, of course, is a powerful seat, and it'll be interesting to see if this progressive message that Beto has will sweep Texas. I'm just interested to see how many people. Of course, I live in a microcosm of liberal rednecks, the Willie Nelson types, cowboys that vote left, or people that look like cowboys that wear cowboy hats that are probably the furthest thing from it, and are driving, Fiat 500s, those kind of cowboys. Some of them, they're probably secretly fond of each other. And so I've seen tons of Beto stickers all over the place. Not too many people, I think, that vote for Ted Cruz are the bumper sticker people. I mean, you can ask Ken there behind the glass. You see a lot of Beto stickers, flyers, posters just about everywhere, don't you, Ken?
I've seen a few up in Arlington, but just a couple.
Really? Okay. Maybe up north
Yeah.
they're not nearly as prevalent. There you go. So there you
go.
There's your report from Arlington. There's a few out there, but anyway, is the tide turning? Are people that turned off by Donald Trump? Is the hype for these midterms? There's always hype because, they have to have a close race. They want the money to flow into these elections. So it's important to have everybody as divided as possible and to have the race as close as possible. Because as long as the race is close, then people continue to invest. Well, a lot of things are coming to fruition. I'm sad to report that something that, not to pat myself on the back, there's many other people that saw this coming down the road. I just saw it a lot further than some, and, well, it doesn't matter. People are now here. Major life insurer says it will require customers to wear health trackers. I'm telling you, folks, it's the mark of the beast. John Hancock, one of the oldest and largest North American life insurers, will stop underwriting traditional life insurance and instead sell only interactive policies that track fitness and health data through wearable devices and smartphones, the company said on Wednesday. The move by the 156-year-old insurer owned by Canada's Manulife Financial Corp marks a major shift for the company, which unveiled its first interactive life insurance policy in 2015, is now applying the model across all of its life coverage. Interactive life insurance, pioneered by John Hancock's partner, the Vitality Group, is already well established in South Africa, Britain, and is becoming more widespread in the United States. Policy holders score premium discounts for hitting exercise targets, tracked on wearable devices such as a Fitbit or Apple Watch, and get gift cards for retail stores and other perks by logging their workouts and healthy food purchases. So, virtual insurance. I like this idea. Not that most isn't already virtual, Somehow that is just doesn't seem that revolutionary to me. But this idea that only giving people insurance that are of this healthy lifestyle is number one, it's kind of an interesting model, because if you only have healthy people, that are interested in fitness challenges and dieting and, I guess assuming that those things are all healthy and produce, a longer lasting person. Because, certain things, are not necessarily healthy. Long, extensive jogs, even though I love jogging, are, at least right now, according to popular wisdom, not necessarily that great for your heart. With sprinting and other things like that, and short periods of exercise and rest, kind of bursting is a better method. But this idea that you have to wear the health tracker to get your insurance and other bennies from the state. We'll talk about it with you. Your calls are welcome. 800-313-9443. It's Blacklisted Radio. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. Are you ready for your state-mandated brain implant? It's a good question. Kurt Nimmo has a great article and a little short video exploring the topic. We'll put it up at blacklistednews.com. But Kurt does a good job bringing home the bacon when it comes to a lot of these topics. And people are ready for this, I think. I think people do want an extended cognitive ability. They want add-on accessories that make them more human than human, if you will. That will be the next step. I think that, it's kind of the natural progression into technology. It is somewhat organic that people will want to use technology to enhance themselves. You see all these robot porn parlors or massage parlors going up in different cities and things that are doing quite well, and in Japan. And I think that that's the unnatural way that people and technology and science merge. And I never thought that people would want to live in a VR world, but when you look at the world around you, it's much more convenient to live beyond. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, when I listen to radio shows, just like this one, other favorites of mine, it does take you away from the moment. It's okay to visualize yourself in other places. I mean, that's what I do when I read a book. But, technology has replaced, I think, this want for our own independence and privacy, where everybody wants to be an internet star. We want to share all of our moments, every one of them. The last blacked out or the last interview with Julian Assange of WikiLeaks before his Ecuadorian embassy blackout, before they cut the net. He talked about how this generation is going to be the very last generation of people that are truly free, and that parents that put every picture of their children's lives on the internet without their expressed consent will forego any of those freedoms that we were allowed. The ability to have some kind of privacy in our childhoods. And I know a lot of people that are my age or close to 40s, late 30s, early 50s, 60s, wherever you may be. Maybe older, maybe younger. We have lots of younger people that are beyond millennials that listen to this show, millennials as well. But I had a choice as to whether or not I was going to put my face on the internet. It wasn't a choice that my mother made. I don't know what her choice would have been if those things were available to her. But, most people just give up so much information. And so something like these trackers that, track everything you do, Fitbit, tied to your phone, and it knows so much that could be used against you, if you or maybe not. Just if somebody's able to track a a course or a habit that you have, it'd be easy to stalk you. And not necessarily the state, but just somebody else who had that information. It'd be easy to find out where somebody would be most likely. So they're very dangerous in that respect. But, with these technologies, people are just so accepting of them. Knowing now, because of what came out of WikiLeaks, what we heard from what we saw in the documents that Edward Snowden released, that all of these big telecom companies are completely in bed with the intelligence agencies, and they're funneling all of our very private and public lives and our financial lives, our healthcare lives directly to the state. So, I don't know. People are plugging into the Matrix, and so when you ask this question, are people ready for state-mandated brain implants? There's going to be at some point, I know it sounds laughable now, but where people are like, well, why don't you want that? I mean, if you're not having negative thoughts about the state, Doug, then, you should just go ahead and do it. Or maybe you get frequent flyer miles for putting this in. Maybe you get some other kind of Great Benny. You get a pizza party for every 20,000 calories you burn jogging. I guess some people would actually kind of go for that. They would enjoy it no matter what, you and I think of it. Big story that doesn't really have a good answer as of yet. The solar observatory that was shut down that we heard about. I'm just trying to find the original story here. But there's a lot of questions as to whether or not it's a CIA spy black site. There's been some kind of FBI investigation into it. And IntelliHub had an even more juicy take on what this solar installation may have been. And that is a solar weapon, which I thought was really, just interesting to to throw out there, that this is some kind of super weapon or directed energy weapons direction facility. I have no idea. It's kind of like, we heard about Walmart shutting down a bunch of their stores, and the story about a plumbing leak. This is a year and a half ago, maybe 18 months ago. These simultaneous plumbing leaks made no sense. The story was an obvious cover for something that Walmart didn't want to talk about. Well, it led to a lot of speculation. Well, we now find out that there was a huge conversion of many of those Walmarts to temporary detainment facilities for arriving illegal immigrants or non-documented people from the South that would like to remain here and work here. Whatever the politically correct term you call those people. Doesn't matter to me. You get the idea. So it was just, 6-7 months later that we actually found out, well, some of the things that people thought were true, that they were turning these things into, internment FEMA camps. They were putting up fences and making cages. Now, what it was ultimately used for was not quite as scary as some had said. Some were talking about the military operation. I'm trying to think of the name of it now. It escapes me. That was happening in Bastrop County. It was a big deal. It was on the news, and anyway. Nonetheless, just a lot of people that were, they're going to shackle up all the patriots and people are on the red list. I'm like, well, maybe not. Now, those kind of facilities are not new, and they sure are scary. So a lot of people, think, well, if this is for martial law, they're going to round people up, or they just round up illegal immigrants. Things like that. Other ne'er-do-wells, people that are possible interest to the Army drill. Just got to bring it up. It's driving me nuts. This military drill. What was the big military drill, Ken, that was happening here that everybody was worried about? That people thought...
shit, I forget.
I can't remember either. It was a big deal. They were going on and on about it. Travis County Army drill. Bastrop County. Let's see. Dang it. Stoke politics of suspicion. This has to be it. It was called... Goodness gracious. It's a special... Yes. U.S. Army Special Operations Command. Jade Helm. There we go. Jade Helm 15.
There you go.
Man, it was going to drive me nuts if I couldn't remember it. But anyway, I mean, that's why people, were thinking, well, this goes live. Steve Quayle, I think, kind of postulated that thought. There's a lot of people, like DC Dave, trying to think of his name, used to actually do a show in this slot. And, he's talking about martial law and this prospect of happening. Not that it couldn't, but I just don't think that the government has an interest in rounding up a bunch of a significant amount of people that just are anti-state. There's plenty of people that the state doesn't like and that don't like the state, and I don't think they really care about rounding up all of them. Now, if you are on the radar, if you're causing trouble, if you are, somebody like Cody Wilson, the state's probably not that thrilled with you. If you're not familiar with Cody Wilson, he is the man that brought at least national attention and a lot of media to freak out lobbyists, government, politicians, to freak out about this 3D printed gun that he was releasing. And if you've seen at least the very first one, it looks like a zip gun. It's a one-shot thing that's made out of plastic. It's not like the AR-15 lowers that, you probably buy now that were scaring people to death. But Cody Wilson, I think his company is Defense Distributed, over the weekend was indicted, I think. He's now being pursued by the Austin Police Department. Apparently, he hooked up with a 16-year-old on some dating app. Now, details about exactly what happened there and whether or not there was coerced, consensual, or underage sex remains to be seen. It's very blurry, and I haven't been watching the story very closely. I know that he was in Taiwan at the time, but this is all on the heels of his soon-to-be next-released gun that he was fighting and suing the U.S. Justice Department over. So, definitely a rabble-rouser. Now, Kurt Nimmo put out a pretty good piece, and he, like a lot of folks, immediately saw this as an attempt by the state, because there's plenty of people, don't get me wrong, it's not okay, but there's plenty of people that are chasing down women of all ages in chat rooms around the world, and for this very, very extensive, lengthy looking hunt to find Cody Wilson, to get Cody Wilson, brings up a lot of questions. So, there's definitely an air of BS when it comes to it. Now, I've always wondered about Cody Wilson too, because he's just an interesting character. He's definitely a hype man. He came out with some other things in the Bitcoin world, one of these high-tech wallets, and he's really good at promoting, with these like kind of scary, edgy videos that brought a lot of attention to him. So I always wonder, when I see his apartment and some of the videos, it looks like he just moved in. There's like no furniture there. It's not like he really lives there. It's just like he popped in, I I don't know, it just kind of bothers me when you live in an apartment and you don't have a picture of your family somewhere, some kind of mementos, that it just looks like you hopped out of a box right before the cameras started rolling. Things like that, they're not necessarily indicative of an out, but they just bother me. Little things like that. 9/11 came and went. We talked a little bit about it here on the show that we did on the 9th. I think it was the last one. And this came out afterwards, and it really did kind of highlight what we have accomplished and the price that was paid. A lot of people talk about the 3,000 plus people that died on 9/11, the human life, the blood that was shed on this soil in the United States. But when you compare that with the $2.8 trillion and climbing, not to mention the murdering of millions of children. I mean, in Iraq alone, almost 1 million people, and that's a conservative estimate that was thrown out there, just several years into the war, said that over 750,000 children had lost their lives directly as a result of U.S. intervention and the occupation of Iraq. So that number, who knows how phenomenally horrible it is now. We talk about the millions, up to 5 million children that are potentially going to starve here in 2019 in Yemen, not to mention all the other horrible, diseases that are, running rampant and will continue because there is literally no infrastructure with clean water, sanitation, and proper disposal of human waste. It goes on and on and on. And so I always am just disgusted by the pageantry and by these sad stories talking about how so many Americans were affected, because you absolutely feel for the individuals that were innocent victims. But the result, of course, the solution to this horrible, horrible tragedy is to do something that's 10 times tragically worse. And you see that as a common theme, or I see this continuing on and on and on, where you have a tragedy, a shooting, on a school campus. And the immediate solution is to take freedoms away, to create a very hardened target, to change the world in which we live in. And that's what happened after 9/11, not to mention the fact that it's bankrupted this country several times over. But those that profit from the financialized debt like it just the same. Another $1 trillion deficit is going to be hit even earlier than expected this year. I was reading that story as well just before I got on air. It's about typical. Guys, quick break. We'll close up shop on the other side. Final segment right around the corner. It's Blacklisted Radio. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. Not that anybody cares, but U.S. jets striking a Syrian town were caught on video, which made its way to Twitter, using white phosphorus bombs. Same things going on in Yemen. The Saudi Arabians are using U.S.-supplied weapons. Actually, the Russians came out with an interesting report, and they said, hey, unlike the U.S. reports that we released from the CIA that are very prepared and provide no evidence, we just, they're just fed to the media and the daily briefing. But it said that the MH17 was shot down by a Buk missile launcher that was owned by the Ukrainian government. They were able to show serial numbers and identify that this system, according to their records, was sold to the Ukraine. Now, regardless of how true or not true that is, it doesn't matter because they've already sanctioned and used MH17 as a way to attack Russia. They've weaponized that story, and just like most conspiracy theories, most things that we initially look at, using Occam's razor. The simplest solution makes the most sense. The fact that the Ukrainians would shoot down a commercial jet over their territory made a lot more sense, considering that they wanted to blame it on Russia, and they were trying to get U.S. weapons, and they were trying to get the support to fight Russia directly on the ground, which of course created a huge issue. But we found out this week that Israel is conducting ground operations and paying for ISIS-type rebels to fight the Syrian government and to, foment more unrest, to create issues for Assad. These things may have worked in the past, but it seems that the Russian government has pretty much shored up Assad, and regardless of whether or not there is another false flag attack, I think the world stage is moving away from Syria. It's become a stalemate, and the U.S. is still operating on the ground, so are the Israelis. So it's an ongoing thing. It's going to be a 10, 15, 20-year war. And, the U.S. War machine, we just talked about the $2.8, now approaching $3 trillion that we have spent. And what has the United States accomplished in Afghanistan? We're now acquiescing and working with the Taliban and deserting the central government that we tried to create there. What's happening in Libya? I talked a lot about this on the last podcast, the fruits of the war. So I just thought that was something that really needed to be put out there. The New York Times had an interesting piece that is definitely worth mentioning on that same tip. New York Times reconfirms U.S. coup plot in Venezuela, adds pro-coup plot propaganda out of Moon of Alabama. Reuters had it. U.S. rejects claim by Venezuela's Maduro that U.S. envoy engaged in conspiracy. This came out September 8th, 2018. Trump administration discussed coup plans with rebel Venezuelan officers. But I think it's a good thing, though, because, he's a horrible guy. Amnesty International is now demonizing Maduro, saying that he's the worst, and under Maduro, summary executions, and state violence against citizens is on the rise. They're probably right. All right, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I'll be back next week, I promise, with another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. Until then, go to the website, support the show there at blacklistedradio.com. Thank you to Ken for the production and RBN for blasting us out across their airwaves. I'll be back. Take care, guys.